Taoiseach, what we're witnessing in Ukraine is a rapidly unfolding human rights and humanitarian disaster. Yesterday, the Russians used cluster bombs in a densely populated civilian neighbourhood of Kharkiv. This kind of indiscriminate attack, clearly it's designed to maximise civilian casualties. And I know you'll agree with me that this is the definition of a war crime. Today, a military convoy extends for 60 kilometres and it's inching its way closer to Kiev. It is clear that Kiev will soon be under siege with massive invading army surrounding the city. The people of Kiev who are watching this on satellite images as a convoy approaches must be experiencing unimaginable fear. Taoiseach, Ireland is a neutral country, but has been said before, and I would say it too, this does not mean that we're neutral on the invasion of Ukraine, which is a sovereign country, nor does it mean we can't act. I welcome the government's lifting of the visa restrictions and donation of humanitarian relief, which have been announced in recent days. However, we have been slow to act against the Russians in the past. It has long been reported, including by John Mooney, in relation to the Russian embassy in Dublin, which has been used as a base for espionage operations across Europe. This was confirmed when the government used legislation to block a proposed expansion of the embassy on security grounds in 2020. Yesterday, Simon Coveney suggested that the Russian diplomats or some operatives that are in Ireland who may not be diplomats could be expelled in coming days. Can you confirm to the House whether this means that the government have identified spies among the Russian embassy staff that are about to be expelled? The economic sanctions announced by the EU over the weekend are wide-ranging and significant and must be welcomed. However, Colm Keane in the Irish Times has reported how one Russian company subjected to previous sanctions in 2014 was able to bypass them and access Western capital markets using a company registered in Ireland. We know that tens of billions of Russian money has been funneled through Ireland using financial services operations in the IFSC and entities called limited partnerships. One of the attractions of limited partnerships is that there's no requirement to publicly disclose who they are really owned by. If the ownership of these entities is shrouded in mystery, then how can Ireland ensure that sanctions are going to be properly applied? Can you confirm what the government intends to do to close any loopholes and ensure there's no place for dirty money to hide in this country? Finally, Taoiseach, hundreds of thousands of civilians have already fled Ukraine and the number of refugees could soon reach the millions. Will you outline the practical steps Ireland is taking to ensure that refugees can easily get from Poland and other Eastern European countries to Ireland and to safety?
Thank you, Deputy Taoiseach.
I agree with the sentiments expressed by the Deputy in relation to the appalling attack and war being waged against Ukrainian people by Vladimir Putin and the Russian leadership. And I've no doubt that the vast majority of Russian people do not support this war. Could I just say to you in terms of the diplomatic issue, first of all, anything we do, I believe, should be in consort with our European partners. I think European strength is important. Unity of purpose is very, very important here in respect of responding to Russia. And that has been the hallmark so far of the European Union's response, working with the United States, Canada, United Kingdom and other countries. Countries that uphold democratic principles, universal principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, very fundamental values. We share those values with other countries. Those countries are uniting in opposing what the Russian leadership is doing. And in respect of the ambassadorial issue and diplomatic challenge, no country is proposing the expulsion of any ambassador so far. Our view is that it is important from a practical point of view, looking after our citizens, either in Russia or in Ukraine, that we keep all channels open right now. We have a limited presence in the embassy in Moscow, with 6 individuals all told. They have a fundamental function to look after Irish citizens in Russia, and also to articulate our views and to keep abreast of what's happening within that jurisdiction and different jurisdictions. So I'm very conscious of that whilst I understand fully the revulsion, the anger towards how the Russian ambassador has spoken on this war, nonetheless, I think we have to keep cool heads, hold our nerve, and keep the fundamentals in front of us all of the time in terms of looking after Irish citizens in particular. On the IFS, entities in the financial services sector in Ireland are within scope of the sanction measures agreed unanimously by the 27 EU member states. All natural and legal persons in the state are obliged to comply with European Union sanctions. A breach of financial sanctions is a criminal offence. Accounts, funds or other assets must be frozen without delay so that they cannot be made available directly or indirectly to the sanctioned person, entity or body. And the sanctions include a prohibition on the listing and provision of services on EU trading venues, including Euronext Dublin, which is formerly the Irish Stock Exchange, in relation to shares of Russian state-owned entities. The Central Bank of Ireland has undertaken an initial review of the links between approximately 3,000 Irish domiciled special purpose entities. So there were 3,000 Irish domiciled special purpose entities, and any links between them and Russian entities. About 34 of these 3,000 entities have a Russian sponsor, meaning that they were established on behalf of a Russian company. The total assets of these special purpose entities is about 36 billion, largely comprised of loans to Russian companies. Of these 36 entities, 3 have been identified as being directly linked to individuals or financial institutions covered in the 23rd of February round of EU sanctions. Work is ongoing in respect of the subsequent sanction rounds. With regard to authorised investment funds, the Central Bank has advised that total Russian assets held at the 31st of December 2021 is estimated at 11.4 billion,
Thank you,
or
Taoiseach.
0.3% of the total Irish fund assets of 3.8 trillion. So that's 0.3% of the total Irish funds assets of 3.8 trillion. And that's evenly split between equities and bonds. And Irish collective asset management, if I could just for completeness and transparency, unit trusts, common contractual funds and investment limited partnerships are subject to beneficial ownership registration requirements to enhance transparency and to help combat money laundering activities. And I can give you further details later.
Deputy Murphy.
Taoiseach, it's really important that we play our full part in those sanctions. And in relation to the limited partnerships, I mean, the very fact that it has been demonstrated that, that a company was able to, or a Russian company was, who was previously subjected to the sanctions in 2014, was able to overcome them, by having a registered company in Ireland. I mean, I think it's going to be really important that if there are loopholes to be closed, if there's legislation to be produced for that, that needs to be done as a matter of urgency. We don't want to look back in retrospect and see that there has been a way around this. And I would hope that you would give us an assurance that there will be a comprehensive consideration of this. Can I ask you, Taoiseach, also about the practical steps I asked you about in relation to people arriving in Eastern European countries across the border from Ukraine? What practical steps are there to make it easy to get from the like of Poland and other Eastern European jurisdictions to Ireland for people who wish to make that journey?
Thank you, Deputy Taoiseach.
Could I first of all say this morning at Cabinet, first of all, we will do everything we can to ensure compliance with the sanctions. We have no interest, none, zero, in enabling any Russian oligarch or anyone who's part of the sanctions list, to be more specific, to either evade or avoid being fully accountable to that sanctions regime. No interest as a country in protecting anybody in that regard. We have to be crystal clear about that, and whatever it takes to facilitate the full compliance of sanctions, we will do and are doing, and with the central bank. And it is, as I say, a criminal offence to endeavour to evade these sanctions or to facilitate the avoidance or evasion or eluding of these particular economic and financial sanctions. In respect of this morning, we went further, and the European Union Justice Minister, Home Affairs Ministers will meet on Thursday to ratify this. But we're making very liberal, understandably so, for Ukrainian people fleeing Ukraine to come to this country, indeed to any European country, but to Ireland, will be able to stay here under the temporary protection mechanism for quite a considerable length of time, have access to our social protection system, housing, the education system. So it will involve a levelling up in terms of humanitarian response in this country. We will work with countries closer to the border of Ukraine and on the border of Ukraine in respect of burden sharing across the European Union and contributing our fair share and facilitating then logistically transfers of people to Ireland where that will be required.